Sure, that works.
That's what I want.
Yeah. I'll be coming over this area, so wherever.
Yeah, I had surgery, so
I started.
So I'm going to show up for 4 weeks. I was going to do this. Yeah, I haven't do that.
That way we can cover this new for the channel.
So it has been filed. Yeah. Same. What's that?
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
Good morning. You ready, Kai? Okay. Kai, would you please call for us?
Yes, sir. Tim Andrus.
Present.
Ryan Bale. John Byram. Kurt Campbell.
Present.
Andra Wision. Present. Debbie Farmer. Charlie Flatten.
Present.
Steve Metzler.
Present.
Terrell Graham. Vic Hildebrand. Tom Youngman. Aaron Teague. Present. Jason Ammerman. Scooter Mangold. Andrew McBride. Daniel Meyer.
Here.
Gary Middleton.
Here.
Travis Pruski.
Here.
Donovan Burton for Robert Puente.
Here.
Vanessa Quaig Williams. Humberto Ramos.
Here.
Weldon Riggs.
Here.
Roland Ruiz.
Here.
Daryl Brownlow.
Here.
Darren Simmons. Mitchell Sowards.
Present.
Jonathan Stinson.
Here.
Ryan Kelsa. Diane Wasenick. Here. Adam Yablonsky.
I'm here online.
Dan Yoxel. Carly Rotzler.
Here.
Tony Franklin.
Present.
Tom Hegemeyer. Ileana Delgado. Don McGee. Michelle Foss.
Here online.
Charles Wiedenfeld. Jamie McCool. Carl Kroll. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Kai. All right, so item number 2 on our agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to make a comment this time? All right, so move to item number 3, approval of minutes from previous meeting of the South Central Texas Regional Water Planning Group. Everybody have a chance to read them? Does anybody have a comment on the minutes? All right, accept the motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, Ramos.
Seconded by Mr. Riggs. Motion is second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say say nay. All right, ayes have it, the minutes are approved. Move on to item number 4. Discussion of appropriate action regarding filling in existing vacancies and vacancies to result from future term expirations or resignations. Y'all may remember that we sent out a solicitation for the municipality's vacancy end of last year. We did have one nomination that was received, Mr. Paul Kite. Mr. Kite is here. There you are, Mr. Beggy. Would you introduce yourself?
Paul, Secretary for the city of Marcus. Been with the city of San Marcos for years. Previously, director for the city of Plainview, North Texas, and then a long run with the city of Amarillo for about 10 years previously. So, we really enjoy it down here. The kids love it. The family loves it. Excited to be a part of the honors.
South. Thank you, Mr. Kite. If you didn't hear online, Mr. Kite is the Assistant Director of Utilities for the City of San Marcos currently. The Executive Committee did review Mr. Kite and was agreeable to accepting his nomination to fill the municipality's vacancy. And then so now I would like to seek a motion or a recommendation to accept Mr. Kite to fill that vacancy.
I'll move to accept Mr. Pike as the nominee.
Second, Ms. Smith. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nice have it. Right, welcome aboard. I think Kai has a seat prepped for you on the left over. Oh, was there a question?
How do you spell his last name?
K-I-T-E. For some of y'all have been a long time. I think there's no relation, but John Kite used to be on the board years and years ago. So we have a Kite back on the board today.
Just a quick reminder to everybody, please speak up for those that are online so they can hear you. I don't know if there's a functioning microphone around as well for those that are farther away from the mic up here, but just a reminder about that.
All right, so now moving to item number 5 on our agenda, election of officers for 2025 Executive Committee. Y'all might think that this is a very quick turnaround because we just had an election, and that's because it is. You remember last year we tabled the election for a couple of meetings and then voted late in the year, and so the slate that's in front of you was recently elected, but our bylaws do indicate that we have to have an election at the first meeting of our year, so here we are. To be in compliance with our bylaws, we need to have a vote again. I would recommend, unless somebody has an objection, that we re-elect the current slate, but we'll open it up. If anybody had a desire to change that or do something different, please let me know.
I so move.
Okay, so we have a motion to keep the current slate. Second. Anderson. All right, so we have a motion and a second. I will ask for votes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, so the motion passes. Current slate is re-elected. Congratulations, guys. All right. Yeah, coffee from Mr. Messer. So that moves us to item number 6. Status report and communication by the Texas Water Development Board. Michelle is with us virtually, so please direct your attention to her online.
Good morning, everyone. Congrats to the officers for one more round. The IPPs are due to us on March 3rd. A lot of work has already been done, a lot of work yet to be done. A couple of updates, reminders associated with that, along with the IPPs, all of the data reports that are associated with the IPPs, all of that data entry needs to be done prior to March 3rd, and there are actually a couple of data reports that will not populate properly until all of that data entry is completed. So if any of the technical consultants or anyone in the regional water planning group have any questions about that, you can feel free to contact me directly about that. We had a chairs call last month for the regional water planning group chairs. They received some information regarding updates and resources for IPP submittals, which I am about to review with all of y'all. They discussed best practices, some of those which I think will be very, very helpful with regards to the IPP hearing process. And they received an update on the State Water Plan Amendment number 3. Some additional information on the State Water Plan Amendment. We had a public hearing in Austin on December the 18th. We received no comments during that hearing, either in person or written comments. The board received the recommendation to approve State Water Plan Amendment number 3 last week, and the board did approve and accept that amendment. So Jonathan Stinson, if you haven't heard already, GBRA is now SWIFT ready.
Thank you.
You're welcome. New water supply for Texas fund progress. We had some additional activities going on late in the year. We published the rules for administering the project funding back in November. We had public review and comments through December 23rd. Only a scattered handful of comments received that are being addressed by the board. For those of you that are familiar with SWIFT funding, the rules are structured very similarly to SWIFT funding. And to remind everybody, the new water supply for Texas fund targets marine and brackish desal, produced water treatment, aquifer storage and recovery projects, and importation projects, and also includes funding provisions for transportation of water, i.e. pipelines. Two things that are not on this slide. SWIFT funding is open for 2025. Abbreviated apps are due to the board February 3rd. So you still have a little bit of time if you're considering it. And there is a financing workshop being presented by TWDB in the Medina County Courthouse, 1:30 p.m. on February the 6th. So next slide. We've got some resources online for the schematic that I'm going to go over very briefly here in a moment, and a summary of all of the public notice requirements for IPP adoption, the IPP hearing, and final plan adoption. And the review checklist that we're going to be using to review the IPP is going to be online shortly. Next slide. So IPP review, submittal and review is a two-pronged process. After the IPP is adopted by the Regional Water Planning Group, it comes to the board on the 3rd, electronically and hard copy. We will review on our end and provide formal comments back to the Regional Water Planning Group within 120 days. We strive to do it before then, but statutorily that's the time that we have. And then you will consider and address comments and then adopt your final regional water plan prior to submitting it to us by October the 20th. Meanwhile, on your end, the Regional Water Planning Group sponsor will post the IPP hearing notice. It's a 30-day notice minimum. It needs to be posted in the state register, as well as newspaper notices, and copies of the plan need to be in place at all the public viewing locations prior to that notice being posted. So give yourselves some time there. We've had a couple of planning groups that have already tried to start planning their hearings less than 30 days after it's adopted. So you've got time. Give yourself time. Anytime in April, early May, to even possibly the first week or second week of June should give you plenty of time. And that's when your public comment period opens, 30 days before your first IPP hearing if you have multiples, and then 60 days after. You'll hold your IPP public hearing or hearings. Oral and written comments can be accepted at the hearing, and again prior to or up to 60 days after. And then, you'll review and address comments there. Does anybody have any questions about the process? All right. Next slide. Here's a little snippet of the posting requirements for your plan adoption. Essentially, the minimum posting timeframes very, very similar to a regular meeting posting. And it does require posting on the Secretary of State website for your IPP adoption. And then next slide. Here's a snippet of the IPP review checklist. So if you're curious as to what we will be reviewing, transparency, it's all right there. And that completes my update. Any other questions? All right, great. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So that moves us to item 8, serious corporate action regarding briefing and worksheet. 7? Oh, sorry, 7. Status report communications related to regional water planning, including reports by the chair, regional liaisons, groundwater management area representatives, and members of the planning group. So do we have any updates from the GMAs or anybody in the planning group?
I speak to GMA 13. GMA 13, as the consultant has released a draft of the new South Central Texas Carrizo model, Carrizo Wilcox model, and any comments are due by February 20th. So if you have an interest in understanding that model, which Dr. Bill Hutchinson's work, comments are due by February 20th. Next GMA 13 meeting will be April 11th at 10 a.m. Pleasanton at the Green office. So we will have a regional meeting before we have the next GMA meeting. So anyway, just FYI.
Any other updates? Groundwater District GMAs, anybody else? I do have one from GMA 9. GMA 9 Joint Planning Committee will hold a meeting, a workshop on February 18th. The meeting will be at 10 o'clock. The workshop will start at 1:30. Water Development Board will give a presentation on joint planning and modeling to start the workshop. Committee is still waiting on the Water Development Board's updated Southern Trend Gam. Member districts will provide our consultant with updated pumping numbers prepared for the new model at the February workshop. Once the model is available for predictive runs, one of the first runs will be to repeat our previous runs from the old model and compare outputs. Member districts are also currently drafting potential DFCs for individual aquifers in their respective districts for the consultant to use in the new model. GMA 9 member districts will be performing another potentiometric synoptic water level study at the beginning of February. This will be the third synoptic water study performed by the GMA.
Where is your meeting?
It's going to be in Bernie at the Cow Creek offices. All right. Since you know it's that will now move us to item number 8. Did you know that? Was there a comment on that? Okay. Now we'll move to item number 8. All right. So the consideration of appropriate action regarding briefings on workshop activities.
Good morning. So this first agenda item is consideration of appropriate action regarding briefings on work group activities. This is mainly in regards to the policy and legislative work group recommendations. Policy and the work group. And it's all about Chapter 8. And just for a brief background, Chapter 8 is a compilation of recommendations on regulatory, administrative, or legislative issues, and that includes ecologically unique river and stream segments, unique sites for reservoir construction, and any other recommendations. And this next slide gives you a brief background on where the work group has been and where the Regional Water Planning Group has been with regards to this Chapter 8 development. And so the first, the work group held 5 meetings between April 25th and September 12th, and they developed a draft Chapter 8 and provided it to the South Central Texas Regional Water Planning Group for consideration at the November 7th meeting. You all at that meeting approved that work group draft. Also at that meeting, there was proposed language that was proposed by Mr. Timothy Foose from the City of Cibolo, or formerly of the City of Cibolo. And at that meeting, this last meeting in November, you all chose to table that proposed language, and the work group went back, looked at that proposed language again, and then prepared revisions to that language on December 11th. And then at the January 14th meeting, the work group considered that newly proposed language and made a recommendation to you all to accept that proposed language. And so Mr. Foose is here today, and he can, would you mind coming up here? And he's planning to present this language and also present information on the reasoning and the background behind this request.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Timothy Foose, recently retired from the City of Cibolo as their Director of Public Works and Capital Projects. I'm also the sitting President of the Canyon Regional Water Authority. The reason I presented this is the chart that you have, and maybe we can go to the next slide. I don't know how to get to the next slide, but go to What I wanted to do is give a presentation of what it looks like for water reserves when you're in a smaller community that has limited growth capacities. The lines up there represent numerous things. One, if you're looking from top down, the purple line represents what water reserve capacity would be for the city of Cibolo if we were still under a 0.6 gallons per minute per connection per year type of a requirement. In 2013, the city was very fortunate to meet extensively with TCEQ, and they lowered our water reserve to 0.42 gallons per minute per connection per year. That's the green line. The blue line represents the actual water consumption for the city of Cibolo. We run at about 0.185 to 0.19 gallons per connection per year in our city. We're very fortunate. The vast majority of our water pipes are new. When I say new, less than 25 years old. Very, very low leakage rates. Our annual report on our water loss averages somewhere between 5.5 and 6% total loss for our systems. We have a very tight system. The red line that runs across there shows what water reserves the city of Cibolo currently has. And you can see that we basically just are meeting or just slightly above the green line, which is what we were required to have. If we were not fortunate to have them, we were in what would be the 0.6, we would be very far out of compliance. What troubles me, and I think what should be considered by the TCEQ going into the future, is when you look at our blue line and the green line or the red line, they're never going to touch. I'm never going to grow big enough where that line is going to get larger. But to remain compliant in the next few years, we're working with CDLGC, Cibolo Valley Local Government Corporation, to develop a water acquisition project to bring water to the city of Schertz and the city of Cibolo. It's an about 11,000 acre foot water. Schertz will need that water several decades down the road. We will never need that water. That project currently in 2020 dollars was valued somewhere between $150 and $200 million to develop that project. We will never drink that water. We will have to pay for that water. That water will be tied up to the city of Cibolo. By TCEQ rule, I can't allow anybody else to use that water because it's basically held in reserve. So when the water is in reserve, you can't sublease that water to someone else because essentially you took it out of your reserves. For us to enter into that project, the city of Cibolo is looking to have to add approximately $25 to $35 a month per connection just to pay the debt service on water that we will impound and technically never drink, ever. On the top corner, you will see our growth projections going all the way out to 2040. We are a landlocked public water system. I can't grow beyond my boundaries. I'm bordered on the west by the city of Schertz. I'm bordered on the south and east by to the Green Valley Special Utility District, on the north by Schertz, and so we have a fixed area to serve. For us, when we look at this chart, it's very difficult to explain to elected officials that we are recommending a project that's in this plan, the CBLGC project's in this plan, that we will have to build, that essentially we won't drink the water ever. And based on projections, I believe Schertz really wouldn't need the water until 2040 or 2050, in that range. And then the water would just be impounded. We would be impounding approximately 5,500 acre feet of water in perpetuity to meet our requirements. It would behoove us, well, let me rephrase that. We're asking, Cibolo is asking, that the TCEQ look at these regulations and see if this is the most appropriate use for impounding water. Do we really need to be impounding water at 0.6 gallons per minute connection when most people now are not using those levels of water? I think those regulations are many decades old, when water was very inexpensive and sometimes it was cheaper to let it leak than it was to fix the leak. Obviously today, with today's water values, that's no longer appropriate. This is why we asked for this language to be put in there. All we're really asking is that the legislative body and the regulatory body look at this going into the future to see, maybe there's a better way of doing this. Maybe we need to look at this moving forward so that we're not taking water for someone that really might need it. San Marcos, Kyle, Buda, San Antonio, where I'm taking that water that could be used by others. Basically, I'm just gonna take it, grab my arms around it, and just keep it forever off the table. I appreciate the opportunity to present today. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, sir. Mr. Ross. Mr. Foos, you've seen the recommendation from the work group, I guess it's on slide 5.
Yes, sir.
And then your verbiage is slide 4. You see any challenge with the?
No, sir, I was part of the process when the language was developed. I met with the group both times. The city is more than agreeable to the language that's being presented. We're just asking that a spotlight be provided on this moving into the future, that maybe this be reviewed and possibly revised.
Do you have any other comments or questions?
Thank you very much for your time. Yes, sir.
When we talked about this in the work group, we found that TCQ refers to American Water Works Association with regards to reserves. Has there been any investigation? I feel like that particular manual of practice that it refers to allows for variances, but I'm not certain on how that works out. Has anybody looked at that particular manual of practice?
I have not at this point in time, sir. Again, thank you very much for allowing me an opportunity to present.
Any other comments, questions? Can you take action on this time?
Yes, sir. Do you want to review the proposed language?
Yes, I can present.
Okay, would you like me to just read it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the proposed language would go in section 8.3.6, and it would be entitled Water System Capacity, and it says, rules in 30 TAC, chapter 290.45, include requirements for minimum water system capacity. Currently, the rules require a minimum of 0.6 gallons per minute per connection for the total public water system capacity, as well as capacities for individual water treatment plants, groundwater wells, ground storage tanks, raw water pump stations, transfer pump stations, and others. The 0.6 GPM requirement converts to 315,360 gallons per year per connection, or 0.97 acre-feet per year per connection. This represents a substantial cost to develop reserve capacities that are unlikely to be used. TAC 290.45G provides a process for a public water system to request a waiver for an alternative capacity requirement. Quote, any water system requesting to use an alternative capacity requirement must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the executive director that approving the request will not compromise the public health or result in a degradation of service or water quality, and comply with the requirements found in 290.46 X and Y of this title. And so the legislative recommendation is none. And for the other recommendation, it says the South Central Texas Regional Water Planning Group recommends that the TCQ perform the following. Perform a systemic review of the minimum water system capacity requirements to ensure the following: maintaining public health, availability of firm water supplies to meet customer demand during the repeat of the drought of record, maintaining water quality. And secondly, the planning group recommends the minimum water system capacity review include the following: review the model to ensure it meets the 21st century needs of rapid population growth in the state, maximum daily demand, safety factor, equivalency ratio calculation, required justification, ensure a balance of maintaining available water supplies during drought while avoiding the need for public water systems to lock up water supplies that may never be used, preventing other public water systems access to water resources. So the action item would be to consider approving the work group's January 14th recommendation to include the proposed language regarding minimum system capacity requirements in Chapter 8 of the 2026 South Central Texas Regional Water Plan.
Okay, so we have an action to consider. Is there any discussion on the action, or do you have any questions to the work group? Well, then I will entertain a motion on the action.
Ramos.
So move for approval. Second. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting the work group's recommendation to include the proposed language, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, so the motion passes. Thank you. Thank the work group, thank the work group for all their hard work. All right, so moving on to item number 9, consideration of appropriate action regarding presentation by technical consultant regarding schedule and progress updates.
Okay, so this agenda item will include reviewing the schedule progress, updates on completed new or ongoing efforts, and updates on draft chapters. So in terms of schedule progress, this is our overview of the 5-year planning cycle. We're in Q1 of 2025, happy New Year. As Michelle mentioned, we are barreling toward this deadline of March 3rd, 2025 to submit the initially prepared plan. Between the initially prepared plan and the final plan adoption in October, there will be several opportunities for public comment, including a public hearing. And so this is a zoomed-in version of the 2025 anticipated schedule, and we're wrapping up Task 5C, the conservation recommendations. The impacts of the plan, Chapter 6 or Task 6, the impacts of the plan and cumulative effects, we'll be wrapping up and presenting to you all in more detail at the February meeting. Wrapping up Task 7, the drought response information recommendations, and we just now wrapped up Task 8, the needs segments and policy recommendations chapter. And also wrapping up Task 9, the implementation and comparison to the previous regional water plan. And of course, we have Task 10, the public participation in plan adoption, that lasts through the duration of the planning cycle. At today's meeting, we're planning to discuss the consideration of the Chapter 8 proposed language, presentation of draft chapters, and then updates on any draft chapters and responses to planning group comments. At the February meeting, we're planning to present the results of the Chapter 6 cumulative effects analysis, and then also present updates on any chapters and responses to planning group comments, and adopt the initially prepared plan. As I mentioned, there will be a public hearing between February 20th and the August 28th meeting, and that public hearing will include an overview of the initially prepared plan, and will also provide an opportunity for written and oral comments from the public. At the August meeting, we will be receiving all of these different public comments from agencies, and comments from the Texas Water Development Board. We anticipate having all of those different comments sometime in the summer. And so we will be developing proposed responses or ways to address those comments. And so that's going to be the major topic of discussion at the August meeting. We're going to review those comments and review the proposed responses to each, and then discuss updates to the plan. And then at the October meeting, we'll discuss what has been done to update the plan and give you all an opportunity to adopt the final plan. And so that adoption of the final plan would be October 2nd for submittal of the final plan by October 25th. Are there any questions on the schedule? Moving on to updates on completed, new, or ongoing efforts. So we're providing draft chapters to you all for your review and comment, and distributing the various chapters. We are going to continue providing you all more chapters and some water management strategies for your review and comment. And we'll present some of the comments that we've received so far and proposed responses to them. We have sent out surveys to water management strategy sponsors with the implementation status of certain water management strategies. This is in Task 5. So this is a new requirement for this planning cycle. It requires us to identify certain water management strategies in terms of like water management strategies that include major reservoirs or direct potable reuse or brackish groundwater projects, depending on the decade of implementation or the volume of the proposed strategy. And so then we need to request information on different dates either actual dates or anticipated dates of implementation of those projects, and compile them and put them into a graphic timeline, basically, of the whole planning cycle, basically starting from around like 2010 or so until 2080, to show that there's progress being made and what the anticipated schedule is. We have begun preparing draft chapter 6, which is the impacts of the regional water plan and the consistency with protection of resources. So at the previous meeting, you all identified which strategies to be considered as recommended strategies, and once we have those, then we can compile that and pull that into chapter 6 to then review the impacts of all of those strategies on the environment and protection of other resources. And we'll present an overview of that chapter and preliminary results in this meeting, and then the subsequent meeting in February, we'll present the full results then. Completed draft chapter 8, and we just discussed that in the previous agenda item. And then we also began preparing draft chapter 9, which is the implementation and comparison to the previous regional water plan. So we, again, once we, as a result of you all approving or designating the recommended water management strategies at the November meeting, we can now move forward with this chapter. So we sent surveys to water user groups requesting information on their implementation status of the water management strategies from the previous plan. And then we'll present an overview of that chapter and preliminary results and subsequent slides in this presentation. And we are continuing interregional coordination efforts for task 10, and we have begun preparing draft chapter 10 to summarize all of the opportunities for public outreach and the new, the renewed focus on rural outreach. And so the following slides are updates on draft chapters. And so we've kind of talked about the planning process for regional water planning. And I'm just going to briefly go over this again. So public participation, task 10, that's the crux and the foundation of all of regional water planning processes. And so chapter 2 discusses the population projections and water demand projections. Chapter 3 looks at the water availability and water supplies. And then those two are compared to determine what the needs are, so supplies minus demands. And if that's a negative number, then that would be a need. And then we develop or identify water management strategies to meet those needs. Then we evaluate those water management strategies. That's in chapter 5. Chapter 5 is also the recommendation of strategies to meet the needs. And then chapter 6 is when we evaluate the cumulative impacts of all of those strategies on those natural resources. So this is an overview of chapter 1. Chapter 1 includes just a general overview of the chapter, and I say general, but it's actually pretty detailed. It's fairly long, it's 60 or 70 pages long, and it discusses the climate, water resources, natural resources, agricultural resources, the economy, current water use in major demand centers, and a summary of water loss audits. And we received no comments from the South Central Texas Regional Water Planning Group when we distributed this for review and comment. And so our plan is to now finalize and include it in the initially prepared plan. Chapter 2, this is the population and water demand projections, and it includes these projections for water user groups, for counties, river basins, different use types, meaning irrigation, livestock, manufacturing, mining, steam electric, municipal, and also for those major water providers that you all designated at the August meeting. And so we received no comments from the planning group on draft chapter 2, so our plan is to finalize it and include it in the initially prepared plan. This is a more detailed overview of draft chapter 3. So draft chapter 3 describes the water sources that are available in the planning area. It provides estimates of drought year water availabilities and existing water supplies for surface water, groundwater, and reuse sources. For surface water, that includes run-of-river reservoirs and for local surface water. And so we've discussed this previously as part of the technical memorandum. The planning group adopted hydrologic assumptions and requested hydrologic variances from the board back in November of 2023. And they were subsequently approved in January of 2024. And it included these various assumptions for surface water, for groundwater, and for reuse. And when we looked at, to evaluate the existing water supplies, we considered a variety of sources shown here on the left. Anything from survey responses, the previous regional water plan, permits from groundwater conservation districts, historic pumping data, water use, survey data, drinking water watch. And so we compile all of that information and update it in DB27, which is the Texas Water Development Board's database for accounting for every drop of water within the region, and compiled it in the tech memo, which you all reviewed and approved in March, February of last year, and then also is included in Chapter 3. And so this summarizes the surface water availability for run-of-river sources, and this was presented in the tech memo as well. This is the surface water availability for reservoirs. This also includes the impact of anticipated sedimentation on these various reservoirs. For the most part, the reservoirs in Region L are not significantly impacted by sedimentation. There are mainly Canyon Reservoir is, and to some extent Coletto Creek, but the others are not impacted. This is the second slide of the other reservoirs within Region L and the surface water availabilities. And this is the surface water availability for local surface water. So local surface water is considered dispersed, limited, unnamed surface water supplies. They're basically stock ponds and ponds that are used for livestock and domestic users, and it's typically just a collection of stormwater runoff. And so these are considered local surface water. Local surface water is considered to be withdrawals that do not require permits. And so we estimated those local surface water supplies for every county that has livestock needs. And this is a summary, slide 1 of 2 for the local surface water sources, source water availability. And these were also included in the techno. And this summarizes the groundwater availability for the region by aquifer. And this summarizes the reuse availability. Reuse is the estimated amount of water available from a municipal wastewater treatment plant that either already uses, is authorized to use, or plans to use reclaimed water. This information is developed based on site-specific information from wastewater treatment plant owners or operators, or from discharge permits. And this summarizes the reuse availability, most of the reuse availabilities within Bexar County. And that summarizes draft chapter 3. So chapter 4, as I mentioned, is the comparison of the supplies and demands. So it's generally supplies minus the demands equals, if it's a positive number, it's a surplus. If it's a negative number, it's a need. And so this whole chapter is aimed at the identification of those water needs. And so the board wants us to show not just the water needs, but also these second tier needs. And so second tier needs are the remaining needs after applying recommended conservation and direct reuse strategies. So it's the second tier needs are just a lower need estimate, basically. And so the water need projections in 2030 are 193,736 acre feet per year, and they increase steeply through 2018. This figure shows basically the delta between what the supplies are and the demands, and that delta is that need. And the needs are shown, there's a, the label, the data label up above each of those bars shows the decadal growth between the decades, between the decades of the needs. And so, as you can see, the supplies in the dark blue solid is relatively stable, whereas the demands are increasing over time. So this gives you kind of a perspective of where we're at with the needs. The needs are going to be also increasing steeply unless we develop additional supplies. So I feel like this is representative of the need for this regional water planning process and the need for identifying and recommending strategies that can actually be implemented to help these water providers find this water based on these demands. And so this summarizes the county by county needs. The red text indicates the top 5 counties in each decade with needs. So in 2030, Bexar County is one of the top 5. And then it's Medina, Uvalde, Victoria, and Zavala. And part of this is, I think the following slide, this slide illustrates it pretty well, that the needs by use type for almost all of those needs except for municipal, they're relatively constant. So manufacturing increases very slightly, mining increases slightly through 2070, and then it decreases sharply in 2080. Municipal, however, in the gray, the needs for municipal uses are actually lower than irrigation uses in 2030, but in 2040 they intersect. And so starting in 2050, municipal is the highest need type, and then it just increases steeply over the planning horizon. And this is all reflective of what the municipal, the population projections show and what the municipal water tanks show. So again, it's really underscoring the need for developing additional supplies. Yes, sir?
Lauren, I have a question on slide 43. Can you remind me what Hayes is? What is that?
Oh, partial. Because Hayes County is split between Region L and Region K. And so this portion, what's shown here is just the Region L portion of Hayes County. Okay. Are there any questions about Chapter 4? Okay. I'll move on to Chapter 5. We've already presented a lot of Chapter 5. The previous 2 planning group meetings went through a lot of the water management strategies, but I wanted to give you all a higher level overview of what Chapter 5 is meant to do. So it includes information on the identification of potentially feasible water management strategies, the evaluation of those strategies, which strategies were actually designated by you all as recommended or alternative, and then it also compiles water conservation recommendations, including water management strategies or other recommendations by the planning group. And so for the 2026 Regional Water Plan, there are going to be 3 subchapters. It's going to be 5.1 is the potentially feasible strategies. 5.2 is the water management strategy evaluations and the methodology. It'll present the methodology of those evaluations and then the actual results of those evaluations. And then 5.3 is going to be that water conservation information and recommendations. And so under 5.1, this is the process to identify potentially feasible strategies. This is the process that you all considered and approved, I believe, at the November 2023 Regional Water Planning Group meeting. And the subchapter will also identify which strategies were identified as potentially feasible, which strategies were identified as recommended or alternative. And then that 4th bullet point, that's the new requirement that I mentioned earlier in the slides. This is the new requirement to develop the implementation status of certain recommended water management strategies. So this is mainly for projects like brackish desalination greater than, I think it's 10,000 acre feet. Direct rural reuse greater than 10,000 acre feet. Any major reservoir regardless of size. If we had seawater desalination, that would be included too, and there are several others. And then under the water management strategy evaluations, so we'll include the evaluation methodology, and the TLUDP requires a quantitative reporting of each strategy's net quantity of water, the reliability, the cost, and the impacts on environmental factors and agricultural resources. Then the second major portion is the evaluation results for all potentially feasible strategies. Each evaluation includes a description of the strategy, a summary of the available yield and how it was estimated, a summary of the environmental factors, so basically the impact of the strategy on environmental factors like threatened and endangered species, vegetation, aquatic resources, and agricultural resources and cultural resources, and then engineering and costing information, and any other implementation considerations like a summary of the different permits that might be required to actually implement that project. And then 5.3 is the water conservation information, and so it includes information just generally about water conservation and like the status of water conservation in the planning, in this plan, recent and recommended conservation legislation and policies, and then it also includes model water conservation plans. I believe we talked, I think that may have been in the August meeting, where we talked about whether or not the planning group wanted to actually develop model water conservation plans or basically refer the reader to the TCQ's model water conservation plans, and the planning group opted to instead refer the reader to the TCQ model water conservation plans. And we received 6 comments from the planning group about the draft chapter of 5.2, basically the water management strategies so far. Of those 6 comments, 3 were withdrawn or not applicable. All of these comments are provided in a table in handout A of your agenda packet, by the way. So 3 were withdrawn or not applicable. There were 2 minor comments that have been addressed, and then 1 comment requested additional language, and that was for the CBLGC Carrizo project write-up. And I wanted to bring it to you all, not necessarily for whether or not to include it in the CBLGC strategy, but rather whether or not you all would want to include it in other strategies, because the language is related to the intent of the reductions in groundwater strategies as a result of MAG limitations. And so if you all would like to include this in the other strategies that are MAG limited, we can do that. And so this is the draft language that was prepared for the CBLGC project. And so this similar language could be included in other MAG limited strategies if you all desire. And so the proposed language is that this strategy, as envisioned, would provide X amount of water, as shown in the table. However, for regional water planning purposes, the available yield has been reduced to comply with TWDP requirements that prohibit overallocations of groundwater availability. Overallocations occur when the sum of existing supplies and future supplies, as groundwater-based water management strategies, are greater than the groundwater availability for discrete geographic aquifer unit, for example, aquifer county basin splits. To comply with TWDP requirements and prevent over-allocations, certain groundwater-based water management strategies included in the plan show an available yield that is lower than the requested yield as envisioned by the sponsor. In instances where a groundwater over-allocation would occur within a particular geographic aquifer unit, all groundwater-based water management strategies in that unit were reduced on a pro rata basis. As described in Guiding Principle 5, please refer to Appendix 5A, this reduction in available yield is not intended to influence or interfere with regulatory decisions made by the governing boards or permitting entities. Oh, and then this is a slide just summarizing what that guiding principle number 5 is. So, I ask for your input on whether or not you deem it necessary or helpful to include this language in other mag-limited, other strategies that are mag-limited.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments?
Could you discuss a little bit about the process of reducing groundwater-based water management strategies on a per rata basis? I think as I read that, it's any and all strategies, regardless of type response or type of use, so on.
Regardless of type of use and more?
Well, regardless, there's no distinction between the water management strategy at all. If it falls within that region that is limited, everyone takes a haircut.
Right. The process is basically we have the groundwater availabilities, which for the most part, these groundwater availabilities, actually for all of these instances where we're running against the MAG limitations, those are in counties that were developed, those are in areas with the geographic unit groundwater availability was estimated from the TWP's MAG estimates, if that makes sense. So, that's a ceiling, right? And so, we first allocate the supplies. So the MAG, I don't know, there's the MAG limitations, so that's the ceiling for both supplies and water management strategies. So we first allocate the supplies, and any amount remaining is then divvied up proportionally to all of the strategies within that geographic aquifer unit, regardless of prioritization. There's no prioritization, it's just equitable.
But that doesn't involve the existing supplies, that's just the feature strategy.
That's correct.
Okay.
Lauren, to be consistent with the previous plan, didn't we cross this road before? Didn't we have some verbiage, something similar to this?
I don't recall having language similar to this in the 2021 plan. I think in the 2016 plan, that went into, that was the first plan, as I understand it, where those MAG limitations came into place. Where the board said you cannot over-allocate over the MAG. And so that was sort of I guess I perceived it as sort of like a bridge between the way things were done previously and the way things are done now. And so it included envisioned projects and also MAG limited projects. And so I think there were water management strategy evaluations for each, or they were, yeah, so there was a whole lot of language in the 2016 plan about that. The 2021 plan sort of picked up where that one left off, which just said, this is the way it is, and just identified what the strategies are, what the available yield is, and didn't really speak a lot to any strategies that might be MAG limited, if that makes any sense. So this would be adding language from the 2021 plan.
Can I defer to Mr. Seaver? Do you recall any of this language?
Not this language. I did speak with Ms. Gonzalez, and there was some language in the 2016 plan, but this just came up to all the water user groups, and I think time for all of us to digest it and finish reading our water management strategy evaluations from the technical consultant would be helpful before any action was taken on this.
Any other comments, questions? Do you need an action from us on this? No? Very good.
So the next is a summary of draft chapter 6. So chapter 6 includes discussion of the cumulative effects model, the environmental assessment, the impacts of the strategies on key parameters of water quality, impacts of voluntary redistribution of water from rural and agricultural areas, effects on navigation, environmental benefits and concerns, and social and economic impacts of not meeting projected water needs or unmet needs. And so generally, the cumulative effects analysis takes into account water management strategies, those impacts on water, agricultural, and natural resources, and long-term protection of resources, and sort of synthesizes it into what the cumulative impacts of all of the plan and of these water management strategies is on these various resources. One thing that's worth noting here is that this cumulative effects analysis is a quantified evaluation that is a result of the planning group and the legislature designating certain stream segments as having unique ecological value. So other planning groups that don't have unique stream segments designated do not do this because it doesn't trigger this special requirement. That special requirement is that there must be a quantifiable evaluation of the impacts on those stream segments. So generally, the cumulative effects analysis takes into account water management strategies from the various groundwater strategies in these various models. So for the Carrizo, the Trinity, the Edwards, and the Gulf Coast. In the case of the Edwards, well, not so much, but so it takes those strategies and we input that into this baseline model, and then we get the flux changes, which means basically the impacts of the groundwater surface water flux, so impacts on stream flow. And so we get the flux changes for the baseline, and then flux changes for the for all of the water management strategies included in the plan in 2080. So it's sort of looking at it from the standpoint of with the plan versus without the plan. And so they take the flux numbers, and then those are then input into the surface water availability models, which also looks at it from the standpoint of including all surface water strategies or not including strategies. So then we end up with the impact on in-stream flow and estuarine inflow by understanding those changes in the cumulative effects of those two. And so the cumulative effects analysis looks at these control points, for lack of a better term, shown here in the upper basin, and then mid basin and lower basin. And this is an example of the results from the 2021 plan. And so this is where we look at the median stream flow by month, looking at it from the baseline. So last cycle, the planning horizon went through 2070. This cycle it goes through 2080. So it would be the baseline in year 2080 versus with the plan in year 2080. And so you can see in the graph on the left, the scenario with the regional water planning strategies included, it shows a reduction in the median stream flow. And then on the right-hand side is another figure, which we'll discuss in a lot more detail at the February meeting, but it basically shows the baseline in year 2070, the stream flow with the regional water plan, and then also shows the environmental flow standards. And so again, you can see that with the regional water plan, the stream flow is reduced slightly, but it's not reduced below the environmental stream flow standards. And so chapter 6 also includes a summary of the environmental assessment, and it looks at it from a quantifiable approach of potential impacts to endangered and threatened species, vegetation and land use, aquatic resources, and cultural resources. And it also includes a quantitative analysis where higher scores equate to a greater potential for impacts, and the scores do not reflect project feasibility or address regulatory and permitting issues. And so this is a summary of the environmental assessment for impacts on endangered, threatened, and species of greatest conservation need. And so, as you might recall, for when we presented water management strategies to you all in August and in November, there were scores associated with each of these categories of 0, 1, or 2. 0 for no or negligible habitat impacts, 1 for minimal impacts, and 2 for moderate or greater potential impacts. And so those scores are then multiplied by a particular parameter for each category. So for this category, it would be, that score would be multiplied by the number of federal or state listed or proposed listed endangered and threatened species with potential habitat impacts for each water management strategy. And so multiplying that score times that, the number of species potentially impacted, gives you the species impact score shown in the table below. And so the scores range from a 2 to an 18, 2 for projects like NBUASR, the Victoria Groundwater Surface Water Exchange, and the higher one for the GPRA Water Secure Project. And for the next category for vegetation and land use, again, there are those scores of 0, 1, or 2, which are then multiplied by the estimated area of non-urban vegetation impacts for each strategy. And so those are, the resulting scores are shown below, ranging between 1 and 2. And the environmental assessment also discusses ecologically unique and ecologically significant stream segments. So ecologically significant stream segments, those were provided by the Texas Forest and Wildlife Department as part of the report that was published in, I believe, 2005. And this figure shows in blue all of those segments that were identified by TPWPD as being ecologically significant. And then as a result of that, the Region L identified segments and designated them or recommended them for designation as being having unique ecological value, and the legislature subsequently designated them as having unique ecological value, and those are shown on this map in green, and then there's a description on the left side for each of those. And the next category is for aquatic resources. So this cycle we've broken down the aquatic resources into two subcategories. And so this is the impact of construction on the streams. And again, we take those scores of 0, 1, or 2, and then we multiply it by a factor based on the estimated number of stream crossings and structures. So we would then multiply that score times those, I guess, other scores in the column on the right. And then the other subcategory of aquatic resources is the impact on stream flow. And so we take the scores of 0, 1, and 2 and multiply it by a factor based on the estimated number of stream crossings and structures, like the potential stream flow reductions, potential alterations to stream flow, potential changes to bay inflows, and increased groundwater use in the Trinity or Carrizo rivers. And then for cultural resources, there is a cultural resources probability model that was conducted to evaluate these strategies based on conceptual project site locations. And based on those, that model, these assessment scores were derived from that. So yeah, those scores are shown here in this table. The other item that is discussed in Chapter 6 is the impacts of these water management strategies on key parameters of water quality. And so the key parameters of water quality include total dissolved solids, or TS, dissolved oxygen, or DO, pH, bacteria, temperature, and nitrates. So this table summarizes the potential impacts to those water quality parameters from certain types of groundwater or certain types of strategies. So if it's like expanded use of surface water, these are the types of impacts to those key water quality parameters. Or if it's a expanded use of groundwater, these are the potential impacts associated with that. The chapter also discusses impacts of voluntary redistribution of water from rural and agricultural areas. Generally, it just describes the impacts, including economic or voluntary redistribution of that water, and it's not, it was found to be not significant. Potential impacts of voluntary redistribution potentially results in changes to crop species, productivity, or amount of area in crop production. Could affect the drawdown of the water table, could provide payments to landowners, to groundwater, and holders of surface water rights, and could result in a positive economic impact for project construction to local rural areas. Impacts on the navigation. Most of these strategies are going to be designed to avoid any buried structures or outfall structures, or designed to not affect navigation. So we're not expected to have any significant direct effects on navigation. And then the chapter also discusses potential environmental benefits and concerns. This slide shows the benefits, and the next slide shows concerns. These are the same as last cycle. And then the chapter also discusses the social and economic impacts of not meeting projected water needs. So this analysis is provided by the Texas Water Development Board. They're planning to provide it in August of this year. The timeline for this is a bit different from previous cycles. In previous cycles, planning groups had to, if planning groups wanted the board to provide it, they would need to formally request the board to develop and provide that this report. Now the board will do it automatically. And previously, the timelines that they would provide it basically sometime in November of the year before the IDP adoption. Now they're actually providing it after IDP adoption. So it will generally include more up-to-date information because the information of unmet needs isn't completely solidified but at the time when they were previously developing those reports. And so this is a summary and discussion of unmet needs. So this was requested, well, it is included in draft chapter 6, and also this was requested for discussion by Charlie Button at the previous meeting. And so this is a summary of the draft potential unmet needs. Some of these numbers have already changed since we provided this to you all last week. And these numbers are likely to get much lower between now, and they will get much lower between now and the final plan. Unlike previous cycles, this cycle is likely to have unmet needs for municipal. So the board generally does not like to see unmet needs, but definitely doesn't like to see any unmet municipal needs, and they require a description, explanation, justification for those unmet needs. I think we all understand that we are in a fast-growing region. Population is increasing significantly, just like we talked about on the draft chapter 4. The trajectory of the needs is increasing significantly and steeply over the planning horizon. And so, as a result, there are likely to be unmet municipal needs for a variety of entities. So the potential unmet needs are summarized in a handout B of your agenda packet. These numbers have changed, like I said, since the previous, since this was provided to you all. And so these entities that are, I've added this orange to this slide since the agenda packet was provided to you all. These are the entities that are likely to have unmet needs. These are the entities that we have not identified a pathway, a confirmed pathway to resolve those unmet needs. So we've already resolved unmet needs for Canyon Lake Water Service and for Carrizo Hill WSC, for Cuero. However, we have not yet identified a confirmed pathway to resolve the unmet needs for those that are shown in orange. There are pathways that we have identified to address the majority of these needs, except for County Other Kamal, County Other Hayes, and County Other Guadalupe Bay. So with that, I leave it to you all to discuss, I guess, the group's appetite for having unmet municipal needs in this cycle. I think Charlie might have some discussion on that too.
Any discussion from Robert too?
So with regards to the unmet needs that you've identified, possibly, are you reached out to those water management service WUGs to figure out what, fine with that, or consider with that?
Yes, so we've reached out to all of these WUGs to ask them how they would wish to address these unmet needs and provided them potential options or suggestions. Some of them are purchase water from another entity that has surplus. So 2 of them have gotten back with us, Go Forth and South Dakota WCID 1, have both indicated that they would be willing to purchase water from GBRA, and GBRA has also indicated that they are willing to sell that water or include it in the plans showing that they would sell that water. The others that are shown in orange, haven't heard from them yet in terms of what they've decided. We've heard from some of them saying, we're looking into it, we'll get back with you. So, yeah, that's where we are.
And so let me ask you another question. When we went down this process, we always understood that we couldn't have unmet needs in municipalities. And so what you're saying, it's fine for us to have unmet needs now? It doesn't make sense to me. I think we need to have the needs met somehow. And so I asked these entities to come up and figure out how they meet their needs.
Right.
We give it a task, we get a CCN, you have an area, you gotta provide water, right? We meet those needs. And so GBRA, great. This
So
it's stunning to me because we've always met the needs. We've always sat back and figured out how we're going to do this, how we're going to do this. Now we're at this position where some of these may not, one of them pops up right away that came here the last time asking for a variance and
yeah, those are maybe 2 different questions. So from a requirement standpoint, the requirements haven't changed as far as I know. So generally, the requirement has been that unmet needs for municipal uses are allowed as long as you include justification or explanation for that. I think the goalposts, not just in regional, but in other regions too, the goalpost of we cannot have municipal needs, like that was the mentality for so long. But with this astronomical growth that's happening, that goalpost has sort of shifted from what I can tell with other planning group regions. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring it to you all to discuss. I think a lot of these entities, like I said, they have pathways to have their unmet needs addressed, except for those county others. I don't see any pathway for them because there's just not water available. Because it's just so dispersed and distributed. Your other question about one of these entities requesting a waiver, we have included their water management strategies that they requested in this evaluation. And even with those strategies, there are still unmet needs for them. Even if those strategies had not been reduced because of MAG limitations, they would still have unmet needs. So they have responded and they've said that they're considering it and they'll get back with us. So I feel optimistic that we can come up with some way to address those needs.
I want to make sure I'm seeing this right. The orange ones are the ones that you did get responses from, and they have a way to deal with their problem.
Opposite. It's the
opposite.
Yeah, the orange ones are the ones that have still not been resolved.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Fusion.
So can we get a copy of the slide, because I don't see it in the packet with the orange striping, or maybe I'm
yeah, sure. It's in the packet, but the orange striping is not.
Right. Correct. And then, since I represent Kendall County, can you talk to me about conversations with Bernie and Bernie's strategies? Where are we with that?
Yeah, so we reached out to Bernie. I as of yesterday, last night, I had not heard from them. But they, granted, they haven't had a lot of time to consider it yet. Their unmet needs right now start in 2060 through 2080. Their primary mode of, like their water management strategies include water conservation, drought management, and reuse. And I believe that's all.
Have they turned something in formally, citing those three?
Yes, we coordinated with them very closely on existing water supplies, on population water demand projection input, and also on the reuse strategy. And so they've been very communicative with us about and engaged with the planning process.
And then so for the rest of Kendall County, you don't have the orange yellow stripe. Talk to me about that, because I can tell you that there are unmet needs in the rest of Kendall County and pockets.
So for County Other Kendall, the identified potential solution or pathway to address those unmet needs is adding an additional groundwater strategy for County Other. So it would basically be individual, so County Other is meant to be municipal supply, or municipal water users. And it's basically people that are, have homes outside of a CCN. And so it's very dispersed, the needs are dispersed, so it's not like, you can't really have a centralized water management strategy to provide water to those different entities because they're just so dispersed over a wide area. And so most of these entities would be, or most of these residents would be developing rainwater harvesting or groundwater wells. And so these estimates already include rainwater harvesting as a strategy, but we talked previously, rainwater harvesting, the actual yield is pretty low. And so, yeah, the pathway for that would be developing water management strategy for them, for success.
I'd like to follow up with you at some point. Just more detail.
Okay.
Laura, we have a question from the bottom. Charlie?
Thank you. This is Charlie Flatten. I'm going to talk about Hays County for a moment. Western Hays County, we've got at least one publicly traded water supplier who doesn't appear on this list, and they're permitted at the groundwater district for over 1,000 acre feet. And I would caution everybody to remind themselves that the MAG that was designated for our DFC in GMA 9 has been breached across the GMA, and I can't in good faith recommend that we suggest that the unmet need can be met with more groundwater pumping. The groundwater is just not here, and it's not going to be here in the future. The group needs to know that and understand that this is an incomplete list, and if the strategy is going to be more groundwater, that's not going to work.
For County Other Hays, you're absolutely right. We're not proposing any additional groundwater strategies to address County Other Hays. For that one, I don't see any pathway for County Other Hays to meet those needs unless they're purchasing from another entity with a surplus that can be distributed to all those different dispersed residents. It would be astronomical in price. So no, we're not suggesting additional groundwater for County Other Hays.
Laura,
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier that obviously we can have an unmet need, but we have to say why. Have y'all looked at what the proposed language, particularly for the County Other, yet already for why what you're going to state in the plan for this?
We haven't prepared official language for it, but I imagine that the response is going to refer to the incredible population growth in these areas, and then discuss the groundwater limitations and the difficulties with providing water to such a dispersed population. And then I think another potential, not necessarily a water management strategy, but a potential pathway in the future for providing water to these entities is as more population growth comes into Hays County, in any county for that matter, these different water providers, their CCNs are probably going to end up expanding. And so a lot of those county other Hays demands are then going to be converted into demands for countywide, demands for San Marcos or some entity like that. So I'm not proposing that as a strategy, but I think that could be discussed as how those projections could end up changing.
It's interesting because I think it's going to be important for those other ones with CCNs to recognize that they may end up taking in those extra water users in the future. So like, for example, our case with Kendall County, Bernie has their own unmet need, but we don't have an unmet need right now, but may in the future have to deal with an unmet need in the county as well. So Charlie has another question or comment.
I was just going to, it was already made, but I don't want to imply that this is only a problem in Hays County. It's going to be a problem in Blanco County and Kendall County and Kimball County and across the hill country. The aquifers are not going to sustain this growth. And if we're going to think about water planning in the future, we need to think of a better way to supply the individual groundwater wells that are going to begin to dry up across the county. And you're correct. It's widely dispersed. It's going to be very difficult. I need that to be at the table.
It's like Michelle has a comment.
Yes, Charlie, thank you for bringing those points up. And I think a combination of what Charlie's been saying and what Lauren has been indicating, especially with some of these smaller WUGs and county other, a lot of the shortage that we're seeing for unmet needs are coming in, the decades of 2050, 2060. And I don't think that some of these smaller entities have the resources and the capabilities of looking out that far for developing strategies to address those needs. And again, to Charlie's point, I don't think that, drilling another well is the appropriate solution. With regards to board language for unmet needs, the goalposts really haven't changed. We're still requesting that potential unmet needs be addressed, but given the explosive growth in the South Central Texas region, the board's language about for the regional water plans explaining whether there may be occasion prior to development of the next IPP to amend your regional water plan to address all or a portion of the unmet need. That addressing that portion with potential regionalization strategies for the future would fulfill the requirements. So something to think about.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Ramos?
You're welcome.
I think we can cross this road. I think it's happened before previously too. It was in Bear County, but is it possible for Lauren to talk to GBRA? Because one of the things you did point out is the fact that the CCNs and some of these holders, we presume, for instance, San Marcos, Hays County, Kyle, Hays County, Guadalupe, I guess Green Valley, all these other come out, and whoever's in these counties would basically obtain water some other way. It wouldn't be groundwater, it'd probably be a large project. And so I guess what I'm asking is maybe have a conversation with GBRA and see if GBRA plan, when you look at this, it's water secure, to bring water to this area, possibly to be used for this.
Those are accounted for.
Okay, so
I mean, we're in the same meeting.
Yeah,
It's
so,
not like we're hiding.
no, I'm just saying, why is that not part of that?
It is.
And why are we still having a shortage? I don't understand.
There's not enough water.
Yeah,
It's that simple. The aquifers don't have it, neither does the river.
We're in trouble, and we've been that way as the San Marcos River Foundation tried to point out 20 years ago.
So what is the deficit? Do we know what the deficit number is?
For municipal,
Like for this county and others, because I'm presuming the other ones, you can basically have time to go talk to them and see what they're planning, how they're gonna meet their needs, right? Like, the Crystal Clears and East Central and Ellenbrook, how are they gonna meet their needs?
I'm sorry.
So for the other ones, like the East Centrals and the Crystal Clears, you can have time for the next meeting to meet with them and figure out how they're gonna meet their needs.
Yeah.
The question is county other. What is the deficit for county other and how are we gonna post it? You know, my understanding was, I was hoping G-Ray could say, but can't leave with this.
Okay.
What is the deficit?
I mean, sorry, but just generally, I mean, this is pales in comparison to probably what the reality is. Because the AI data super centers that are, 10 of them are coming to Texas. One of them can use the same volume of water as San Marcos, Kyle, and Peter combined, not including the tens of thousands of people that have been working. So, I mean, I think what GBRA is planning on doing and going to the Capitol with this information at this point in the cycle is let the ledge know kind of what we've already been saying is it's highly likely that there are going to be municipal unmet needs identified in this plan. And there's no state function that, or grant money that enables your entity or mine to force upon anybody water from somewhere. So, I mean, we're all planning on seeking water sources, whether it's brackish or otherwise, that's left within the basin, but everything else is, as everyone in the room knows, further away and more expensive. And we can't force these folks to do things.
Strategically, we do nothing, then we get the position, right? We do nothing, and we take this and say, that means in the county, but then we have no leverage, right?
Leverage for what?
Well, I mean, with the story is that we need something, what do we, iceberg, what is it, how do we need this? That's the question, is how do we need this?
$2.5 billion.
Banning lawns, 50% of your use.
So to follow up with Mr. Stinson's statement about GBRA, I mean, are you defining your water secure? I know that you have the underground and reservoir, some off-channel storage in Calhoun County, Morwell, and Crucible. Have you all fleshed out water secure that we can all know about? I haven't seen the particulars. Mr. Nichols has told me, but I don't think that was something I could share with my constituents. But I mean, what is that amount of water that you're going to be getting from this project? What's the timeline? Is it going to go across I-35? Could it indeed help Kendall County? I mean, what do we know about that? And if Kendall County actually wanted to get into the game and preserve the water, I mean, we're not a utility, but why couldn't we preserve water, produce, pay for it through bonds or whatever? And use. Sorry, that was a lot of questions.
All of the potential customers, I think, that are involved in water secure or the regional water planning process are included in this slide.
That's right. So we included all the allocations that GBRA indicated that would be allocated to these different customers. That's already been accounted for in these numbers. And so, yes. Back to your, I'm sorry.
Wait, so you're saying water secure is already accounted for in this plan and there's still unmet needs?
Yes, ma'am. However, for example, Canyon Lake Water Service, Clearwater State's water system, Wimberley and Bernie. They are geographically located in an area where they could purchase from GBRA and include a strategy in the plan to purchase water from GBRA, state surplus, if they choose to. GBRA has indicated that they are willing to sell water to them and willing to include that as a strategy, purchase water as a strategy. We are waiting to hear from them on that. So there's, like I said, there's a pathway to meeting these needs for Burning, Clearwater Estates, and Wimberley from Water Secure. And then for East Central Sud, Elmendorf, and the Oaks, the potential pathway for them is to purchase water from SAWS, because they are already existing customers of SAWS. And we've reached out to them, and we're waiting to hear back. Crystal Clear Sud, one of the pathways is purchase from CRWA or potentially purchase from GBRA, and we're waiting to hear back. Texas State University, they could potentially purchase from San Marcos. So of all of those that I just mentioned, there are pathways identified for all of them, except for County Other Kamala, County Other Guadalupe, and County Other Hayes.
Well, one more point, to Diane's point, irrigation, watering lawns, not having zero escaping, that's not talked about enough, because that's one of the problems we have in Clinton County, with people who move here thinking we have to have green grass. And the other one is rainwater capture, which the county's getting behind. We actually have a property tax exemption. And so we're not going to spend water out of straw, like Rumpelstiltskin and gold. And so if we don't get serious about conservation, then there's going to be no pathway.
So
hear enough about conservation.
Water conservation. So I heard you mention water conservation, basically conversion of lawns to xeriscaping, rainwater harvesting, and then also drought management. So water conservation is already included and already accounted for in these numbers. Rainwater harvesting, already applied, already included in these numbers for Kimball County. Drought management is basically a temporary cessation of watering lawns during extreme drought. That's already accounted for in these numbers and in this plan. When it comes to permanent conversion of lawns to xeriscaping, that is not included. And that could be a potential strategy in the future should the Regional Water Planning Group want to do that. I think it's too late right now to include it in the plan. It could be included in terms of like a narrative within the chapter 6 of like, this is a potential pathway to help relieve some of this. Yeah, so we're accounting for quite a bit of that. I'm going to go back to one of your questions, Mr. Ramos. You had asked about what is the magnitude of the need for county other. So there are 3 county others that we still haven't identified a pathway to meet their needs. Kamala, Guadalupe, and Hayes. And so their unmet needs don't start until 2050, and it's just for Cologne County for 710 acre feet. In 2060, that's when all 3 of them are showing unmet needs, and they're somewhere around 10,000 acre feet per year. And then by 2080, it increases to 28,000 acre feet, thereabouts. Which 28,000 acre feet is a lot of water. Yes, sir.
I think I heard the answer, but I want to make sure. You have had a conversation with every name on here, or you're still waiting for somebody to get back to you, like you said, Bernie, you just got an email last night or something.
Right.
So you have talked to each one of these entities?
We've reached out to all of the entities on this list, except for County Other.
But haven't necessarily gotten a response. You haven't necessarily had the conversation with all of these entities.
Right, that's correct.
So, okay. And then
Michelle, this is Gary Middleton. Has Victoria reached out to y'all on a comment on this yet?
No, sir.
Okay. I sat in interviews last week with 3 consultants. We will be hiring them in early February to let us try to fulfill most of our unmet needs and also get us into compliance with our deficit during a repeat of the drought record. We've got quite a few options that we're looking at, everything from the GBRA water to increasing the capacity of our off-channel reservoirs to groundwater and a blending of it with the surface water. And we're looking at mostly cost. We've got sources, or a source or two of water. We're just trying to determine what we think we can afford, and we'll be moving forward on it once we make up our mind. Thank you.
So just to continue on, you've reached out to them, some of them you're still waiting pending. Is there any help you need from us to reach out to some of these? Obviously, collectively, we know all of these entities, and you have the appropriate parties, and I've particularly focused on Fort Sam. I know they're difficult to find sometimes. We certainly don't, in Bear County, want to show our military bases don't have an unmet need, don't have water. I don't think that's the case, but I just want to make sure that to the extent you can't find somebody, an appropriate person, we could probably collectively help out.
Sure. I know that Mr. Siebert has already been in touch with the Oaks, East Central side in Elmendorf. So I think we're okay there. I would encourage perhaps Mr. Kite to reach out to Texas State. Our previous contact at Texas State is no longer working there, and so I'm not sure if we even have the best contact for them. So if you could ask them, that would be helpful.
We are currently reviewing the emergency interconnect we have with them and potentially making that a permanent.
Okay. And then Wimberley, does anybody have any contacts at Wimberley?
Well, I know some city council people, and they could probably get something done.
Okay.
I'll ask them.
That would be great.
Wimberley's a WSC and governed by an elected board of officials. I'll be happy to reach out to them and see what I can get out of them. But also in Wimberley, there's an even larger investment-owned utility called Aqua Texas that draws from the same aquifer, which is rapidly declining, and I don't see them anywhere in this list. I don't know if they apply. I mean, they're not part of the state water planning, or are they? I'm not sure. They're certainly not eligible for any state funding, but is it worth reaching out to them, or are they off the table?
So that's a really good question. So Aqua Texas is not included as a LUG, so they're actually included under County Other Hays, and that's because they own several independent public water systems, and so individually they do not meet the qualifications to be a LUG. However, holistically combined, they would. So I know I had been in touch with them earlier in 2024, May, June, July, around that time, asking them if they had any water management strategies they would want to include. I think they indicated that they were working on a few different things, but they didn't formally request anything in particular. So it would probably be helpful to ask them if they have any plans to develop a source of supply or purchase water from somewhere, so that we could then apply that to Hays County Other and potentially try to lower those unmet needs in Hays County. For them, the unmet needs start in 2060, and they're 3,883 acre feet. In 2070, it's 8,188. In 2080, it's 15,057. So 15,000 acre feet is quite a bit of water to provide.
Yes. I have maybe a higher level question, basic understanding. As I understand it, we have never in any previous plan shown that need.
For municipal uses.
Municipal.
That's correct.
And so is this discussion trying to avoid showing that in the plan?
I think it's.
And if so, why? I mean, if it's an issue, we want to draw attention to it, wouldn't we put a forward plan that shows anything? Because, as has been discussed around the table, there are no new supplies. So, I think what I've heard, one of the criticisms from in the legislature about the planning process is that in some ways, these are my words, these are not Senator Perry's words, but it seems like that we mask the issue in the planning process by showing that every need is met, when in reality, it may not be met. And so, I mean, am I off base? I'm looking across the table.
I totally agree. And we're not even talking about what's happening down at the coast with the bays and estuaries, so.
I think the intent of bringing this up is exactly to ask, and exactly what you've asked in a very eloquent way.
I think we need to make sure that it is the case. Sometimes it's just lack of communication and they're not involved in the process. And so potentially it's unmet just because they're not involved. And so I don't necessarily know that it's unmet.
Well, that's very true. We need to be sure. But I think we've had warning for some decades now that we are drawing down our groundwater to the point that springs are drying up and they're not feeding rivers anymore. And in particular in the Colorado River on about Guadalupe, they're seeing less water in the river because of big drawdowns in groundwater content. So we've had warning for years from the groundwater districts about this, and that's why the whole DFC system is set up, and we all know what we've been heading for. We've been heading for a shredding for some time, and we are there. And so it is now, I think, incumbent upon us to make that clear with the language that we use to explain our unmet needs in the plan.
Yeah, I'd echo, because I look at Kimball County, and I'm on, president of the groundwater district there, and we're watching our numbers, and I know the MAG says we've got X amount of water, and we can do the math on how many wells we have, and that seems like there should be enough right now, but we're at 28 feet of our 30-foot DFC, so we know there's a disconnect here. We're already at 28 feet, we're 2 feet away, and the MAG and the DFC says we're okay, but the numbers don't match. We expect this new background to really reduce our ability to groundwater. I mean, it should, if it's done right. And so we're probably going to be over the DFC like Hays County overnight when a new MAC comes up. So, and I kind of want to see Kendall yellow.
So to this point, I have a clarification question. I live in Bear County, and the first question is, on slide 42, it shows a large need, very large, right? But they're not on this slide. That just implies there's no unmet need in Bear County. Is that correct?
Okay, so need is different from unmet.
I know, that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay, so needs are supplies minus demands, no strategies. Once you add in those strategies, if there's still a need, that's an unmet need.
Right, so here's the second part of the question. In Bear County, the water management strategies in this plan, do they cover all of the need, or are there some of those possible pathways that cover part of the need?
Okay, so East Central Side, Elmendorf, and the Oaks, I think they're all in Bear. Portions of them are in Bear, so they're considered unmet needs until those pathways are solidified. All of the other municipal needs in Bear County are met.
By strategies, not pathways.
By strategies, by actual strategies. However, they're showing a need for manufacturing in Bear. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's sufficient supplies to meet all the other demands.
You're saying there's an unmet need for manufacturing in Bear County?
Yes, in draft unmet need for Bear County.
This is just municipal, so there are other unmet needs.
Right, in the handout, it shows the other categories of use that there are unmet needs for like, irrigation, manufacturing, mining, and one steam electric in Victoria.
I mean, sensing seems like the will here, like, we're not really concerned with showing them that needs municipal in this plan, because we think it highlights what's going on. I imagine we're having another meeting next month. You're gonna continue your process of making sure that these people are participating in the plan, and if they do have a strategy already in place, that we capture that. So we're gonna get an update this on the next meeting, I guess, is that?
Yes, sir.
Fair?
Yeah.
So
if these entities don't agree to one of those pathways, and if one of the pathways is to purchase water from SCTRWPG, GRA, if those entities don't agree to it, so if both entities are in agreement, then they'll just have other needs.
we're gonna get another round of this discussion, so think about it, because we're gonna need probably to advise them on how we wanna present that, right?
And we'll develop proposed language to justify or explain each case.
And you'll have that for us at the next meeting as
Yes,
well.
sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
Mr. Reese, you mentioned Senator Perry had a press conference, I guess last fall, and talked about 100,000 acre feet, no, 1 million acre feet, it's a big number, Texas was short. And he was planning a water grid, as if making a grid made water, so I haven't heard the solution to that. But how does the legislature's plans, and whatever they're doing, fit in with what all the regions are doing in the planning cycle?
I'll try to.
Yes.
Go ahead. I don't know how to answer that. I'll try to answer it. It'll make absolutely no sense. I don't know. First of all, just the timing doesn't line up for this particular water management, water plan. So that would be the next one. All I've seen from the legislature is they're going to put a lot of money into it and throw out a hypothetical map with a lot of pipelines. I've seen various maps. A lot of them are ocean desal. I've seen it coming from Louisiana and Arkansas and Houston and some other places. But all they're identifying so far is a money source and a theoretical map of pipelines. Not associated with that is where is the wet water coming from, how are you going to treat it, who's going to pay for it, and all of the things to get it to the end user. I don't think they're going to deal with that. I'll say today, this legislative session. It'll be a multi-session approach that will certainly have no bearing on this plan at this point.
Well, my question would be, shouldn't they coordinate with the Smart Development Board in this whole process? And then if you're saying multi-sessions, then they're just going to start the dialogue now about this deficit, and this is way down the line. Maybe.
But
I'll let you tell Terry.
You would agree that what I think they're looking at is really all imported water. I mean, because there's no development in these supplies within the state of Texas. There's talk about, I should say, development of some brackish water within the state. But it's either ocean desal or it's imported from somewhere else that has water.
Yeah, but I'll kind of I'll get controversial for a second. We're talking about use and use patterns, and I think all that is a big thing, and what water is available, it's available only because that's what the regulations say, DFCs and permits and all of that. There is a possibility as well to make more water available through those processes. So it's not necessarily that the water is not there. It's not there regulatorily. And so there might be options as well to make more water available out of the existing pot of inventory.
That brings me to a point that I would like clarified. You mentioned that you're waiting on this MAG model and you expect to be surprised with it. And is that model going to be considered in this plan or is it in the next 5 years?
It could be the next plan. It's the
Oh,
next plan.
well, I think that's going to be a fun
So
plan.
is your model going to be including the strategies from this plan into it?
That's a good question, and I don't have a good answer for that.
So
They're running it now, so I mean, I don't know, they're probably taking the 21 strategy.
exactly, so it's possible that it's not really going to be reflective of most current conditions until not the 2031 plan, but the 2036 regional water plan. Your updated model. So, is that your understanding too? Is that other people's understanding too? Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, there's definitely a delay from when the data hits to when it's run and then it cycles in.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention, Mr. Breeze, you mentioned something about how in the past there's been concerns about how trying to mitigate these unmet needs is sort of masking the actual needs that may exist. I think there has also been a shift from previous cycles where we aren't including strategies that we know for sure are never going to be implemented, like seawater desal and bringing it all the way to certain entities that have absolutely no plans for desal, like in San Antonio or something. So we've kind of moved away from that procedure as a whole, but not just us, but like all the different regions, I think, are moving away from that as a whole so that we can more accurately reflect reality.
We want to move on to chapter 9. We dare.
Thank you. So chapter 9, this is, chapter 9 in the previous plan was specifically about funding, and then chapter 11 was about the implementation in comparison to the previous plan. So chapter 9 of this cycle is sort of bringing in components of chapter 11 and kind of melding them together. So implementation of the previous water plan is a summary of the results from this implementation survey that we sent to all the different WUGs that have strategies included in the previous plan, and that even includes like water conservation or drought management. And then it also includes information about the regional water planning area's progress and towards achieving economies of scale and regionalized strategies. And then the comparison to the previous regional water plan was previously in chapter 11, now it's in chapter 9. And so we compare the 2021 plan to the 2026 plan in terms of demand projections, droughts of record, hydrologic assumptions, source water availabilities, existing water supplies, identified water needs, recommended and alternative strategies and strategy projects, and any other aspects of the 2026 plan that the planning group chooses to compare. And the implementation survey, this is just a summary of what the questions are. The survey is from the Texas Water Development Board that then, as consultants, sent out. Yeah. And so that summarizes chapter 9. Chapter 10, this is the public outreach and plan adoption chapter. And it includes a description of Regional's guiding principles and the plan enhancement project, the plan enhancement process, rather, discussion of interregional coordination and public participation, and that includes all of the work groups and coordination with water user groups and wholesale water providers and rural outreach. From a public participation standpoint, we did the numbers, and we've had at least 52 meetings in the last 4 years, since 2021, in terms of work group meetings and planning group meetings. By the time we reach October, we'll have at least 56 meetings. And so this chapter will also summarize the process and the dates for the fully prepared plan adoption, and once the final plan is adopted, we'll also summarize that process. And that completes the presentation. Does anyone have any questions, any discussion, direction? That's all I have.
Yeah, I had a slide here with an action on it, so.
That was erroneously included.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. All right, so that moves us to item 10, discussion of appropriate action regarding the establishment of additional subcommittees. There's been no desire to have a subcommittee that I'm aware of, so if anybody has something that we know, but I don't believe there is. So again, that'll take us to item number 11, schedule a potential agenda item for the next meeting. Our Our next meeting, as we mentioned before, based on the IPP deadline, is February 20th, so it's a quick turnaround. And then that brings us to item number 12, which is our second public comment portion of the meeting. Is there any public comments? Nobody's asked for public comment. Anybody in the public? Okay, so then that brings us to our last item, which is adjournment. So thank you all, everybody, for being here. Very good discussion today.
This is Gary Middleton again. Is anybody still listening?
Yes.
I think when we did roll call, I think my mute button was on, so just want to make sure everybody knows I was there.
Got you, Gary.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm really glad that Charlie brought up
What is a
I didn't realize.
Have you done this before? Yeah. That's how I usually get one. It's just like
I'm very interested.
Oh, so I semi-retired on December 31st.
With me, my family,
I didn't get any.
very small.
Would you just check your records and update it?
Not me yet.
That's why I'm curious, like Kendall County showing it has a vet need, vet tax, and we're just applying those like general conservation. No. Yeah. This one I borrowed from as well as he had something, what did you have for in drought? Yeah, I went to Dr.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it everyone's still the data we have locally doesn't match. That's we think this game is going to change. So I like that. It was there, but it's going to. We think our email. I'm done. Yes, so we had to deal out of that. Over just let the gap across all of our. She is the best. Describe those customers. Anybody can unfortunately, she realizes that it's not. We're not. It's still. So he came over and he gave me the weekend. And we'll sit down. And she was like,
But it was fine. It was walking out. Yeah. I'm a consultant.
I'm not getting that much
I had another question on there. You had a comment. Additional language on the back of it. You had a comment whether or not we had the option of other ones. We didn't actually make it. So we'll just bring that up. If desired. Carry it on your shoulders.
I almost came in today.